everybody, and welcome back to the Creative Life Studios. So today is the first video in a new series called Project to Page. Today we're going to be learning how to DIY washi tape, and it's a super simple process. You're just going to start with wax paper and just plain generic masking tape. And you can see I'm just taking my masking tape and just laying it out on my wax paper. Since I'm kind of doing this as a tutorial, and this is actually the first time when I recorded this video that I had tried this technique, so I'm just doing a lot of them so that I could do a whole lot at a time. And you're going to see in just a moment, I'm going to cut it actually into two little sections. That way I can try a couple different techniques while we're doing this. So I've just squared off the end with just a pair of scissors, and then I'm just going to cut the entire strip in half. That way I can kind of play with two different techniques and just give it a try. So for the first technique, I'm just going to be playing with just some plain acrylic paint and my gel press impressibles. If you're not familiar with the gel press impressibles, we kind of jokingly call them stamps on steroids because they're made with the same material as your gel press plate. And so, but they're embossed, so you can use all sorts of your regular mediums that would all the mediums you would use on your gel press plate, but then you could have these really great, fun, funky prints. This one is called Overlapping Circles, and it's my favorite because it kind of reminds me of bubbles. I'm also going to be using the four-pointed star from my Faith Impressions line for gel press. So it might kind of look like I'm just making just kind of a big background, but what you need to keep in mind is that these are just going to be individual strips, and my main goal in this is just to really just add bunches of texture and bunches of color. So I'm stamping with kind of my favorite decal stamp that I've had forever, so much so it's coming off the wooden block. And so I'm also going to be adding just a little bit of kind of a black splatter paint. I always like to just kind of add some splatter paint or like that little decal stamp to my projects because I feel it kind of gives some cohesion and makes it feel like the project is all together rather than just a bunch of images kind of hovering over each other. So while that dries, I'm going to go ahead and move on to that second set. For this one, I'm actually taking some clear gesso and just using my brayer to bray a light coat over these little strips of masking tape that I have. I'm doing that because I want to use some watercolors on this next step, and of course the slickness of the masking tape just really wouldn't help that very much. It would just beat up. So I went ahead and just added that layer of Liquitex clear gesso. It's one of my favorites whenever I want to add a lot of texture because it has a really great tooth to it and I like it. A lot of people don't like texture in their clear gesso, but I mean, I'm not most people. So you can see I'm also using a brush that I wouldn't normally use for watercolor. Since I'm not trying to fill in a shape, I'm just going for filling in the whole stripe there. I'm just using an angled flat brush with just a couple of colors of just watercolor. And of course, I want to make sure this step is dry before I move on to the next one. And so I'm just hitting it with my heat gun really fast. And you can see I didn't do anything crazy. I just added just a swatch of color on top of each of them. And then we're just going to do a little finger painting. Keeping in mind, we're not trying to do a complete background. We're not trying to make any kind of particular shape or design. I'm really just kind of just adding random colors and random patterns so that when I take them apart and use them in strip form, they'll just be adding a lot of texture and patterns and colors to the project that we're actually going to do in the other half of this video. So I am looking for something, oh, silver paint. I was like, what am I looking for? So now I'm just using a sponge and a stencil to just add some pops of silver to this project. As you can see, that is a well-loved stencil because it's really dirty. And then drying that step. So this is a great way to just be able to not only match colors if you're working on a specific project, but just kind of have fun. If you're having one of those days where you want to create something but you can't really think of anything, your brain's just not really working for you, this is a great way to just use some creativity and just make fun. Just make a mess. And then, you know what? If it turns out great, if not, It's just tape and wax paper. But you never know, you might come up with some really cool pattern or some really cool technique or just something different that you might never thought of doing before. And I think this is always super fun too, because sometimes your washi tape is, if you're like me, you have tons of it, and you kind of get tired of seeing the same patterns and the same colors over and over. So this is a way to kind of expand that without having to go out and buy more stuff. Because chances are you probably already have wax paper and you probably already have masking tape somewhere in your house. I do want to try this again with like the thicker masking tape and get some big chunky washi tape. I think that would be super fun. So to finish this particular pattern up, I'm just adding some white splotches and some pink splotches, and then I went ahead and grabbed my first pattern because it had had time to dry, and I'm just going to use some archival ink. And it's not a texture plate. We all know it's a silicone trivet, just to add more texture with some purple to this particular project. And while I finish that up, I want you guys to go grab your Bible because we are actually going to now use these actually for a project in our Bible. All right, so now we are looking in our Bible and we are in, where are we? We are in Romans chapter 8, verse 37, where it talks about that we are more than conquerors. And so I am just going to use this new washi tape that I just made just to build my background. I'm just using it to kind of to stack on top of each other and cut it at different angles and that kind of stuff, just to kind of build some interesting background. And I love the kind of that it's a little bit of color and a little bit of texture. And this is super great too if you wanted to customize your Bible. I know a lot of people have been taking washi and putting washi tape on the edge of the beginning of every chapter, so that they're easier to find and it makes your Bible look pretty. But this is a perfect way if you want to customize and make your Bible very harmonious in its color scheme, to be able to do it that way. So I think that's fun too. And of course, never be afraid to cut your washi in half. You're not always going to find the exact size or width that you want. So feel free to kind of mess with it and cut it and that kind of stuff. I did find out something with this that is a little bit easier to keep in mind. I know typically you kind of want to just kind of peel the wax paper from the back of your masking tape, but what I found is actually easier is if you take it and lay it flat and then begin to peel back, which I'll show you here in just a second. I think I'll do it again. I did it with that big blue piece a second ago. It seems to be easier, rather than taking two hands and peeling it apart, to lay the wax paper flat and then just peel the strip back, kind of. You're less likely to tear your masking tape. And I realized I left a big dot or open spot in the middle of that. I'm not sure why I did that. And you can see I'm going to use that technique where I'm going to maybe, there you go, lay it flat and then pull it back. I find that really is the easiest way to release it from the wax paper without accidentally tearing the wax paper or accidentally tearing your masking tape. So I kind of just added that piece into that spot that for some reason I missed. I'm not sure why. And then my trusty Faber-Castell Pit Artist pens in that kind of dark gray, just adding some shadow just to give all of my background just some definition, and of course highlighting this particular verse that we're using. And then going in with my trusty Sharpie Gel Pen. So if you aren't familiar with the Sharpie Gel Pen, it's kind of fairly new. And it is one of my favorites lately for doing finishing work. It glides really well over paint. It doesn't get all gunky the way a lot of pens do. However, the name Sharpie can be a little bit misleading because it's not permanent. So this is definitely not a pen you want to use for any writing or anything that you're going to put any kind of medium over, because it will completely spread and it'll kind of mess up, and we don't want it to bleed all over everything. But like I said, it's great for those just finishing work and finishing details. It's definitely my go-to one right now. I'm hoping they come out with more colors. Right now they've got like black and red and blue, I think are the only ones. So I'm gonna put my little title right there. And these are some super old vintage Seven Gypsies stickers that, I mean, you can't really get rid of just plain black because, hello, you can use that all the time. And so I'm just doing the More Than Conquers. And what's funny is you might not have noticed right there, I didn't have a big H, so I just used two eyes and then cut a snippet off to make the middle of my H. Again, just a little tip that sometimes you just can DIY and and kind of match your stickers together. In the finished project, you honestly can't even tell. And I didn't have enough of upper or lower case for Conquerors, so I kind of just did a hodgepodge, and I kind of like it. It's fun. And I wanted to add some other interest to my page, and so you're going to see I'm going to add, since all my other strips are going vertical, I want my some interest to go horizontal underneath my words, just to kind of break up the whole process. And I'm just actually tearing it with my hand so that, again, I get a little more visual interest and get a little bit more texture from that rough edge. And little baby one. And just adding a little bit more of that shadow, and then just a few more details, and just a few little dots of white to make everything pop. And that's the end, pretty much the end of today's project. You're going to see I'm going to add just a little bit more shadow, and I'm going to add the date because we always date our projects. I'm also going to post a link to the post that's over or the page that's on the other side in case you're interested in seeing how that one came about. So I'm going to finish this up. I'm going to add the date, and then we will be done. Thank you guys so much for joining me for the first video in my Project to Page series. Make sure you subscribe and click the bell so you can join me every Monday and Friday for a new video. Thanks so much for stopping by.